I want to talk about what's happening in the Congo right now because the Trump administration has been referencing it constantly. I'm not an expert on African affairs. It's somewhere that I really want to gain a lot more knowledge, and I'm trying to gain more knowledge. I'm trying to read some more monthly magazines on it. And so listening to the Trump administration talk about the success of the Congo peace deal, of Trump being the big peacemaker, he references two conflicts mainly. And those two conflicts he likes to reference is one is the war between the Congolese government and M23 rebels that were backed by the Rwandan government that he says he's negotiated a settlement on, and a settlement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, the settlement between Azerbaijan and Armenia is still up in the air. Despite the fact that he treats it like a done deal, the Azerbaijani government has repeatedly stated that until the Armenian government, until the government in Yerevan changes its constitution to comply with their demands, that even if they made a commitment in Washington to peace and territorial recognition, those type of recognitions have been made before and fighting has restarted before. So that in and of itself should not be used as an indication that the fighting is over, and we have to wait until the government says the issue is settled. I accept the constitution as is, and we accept that this corridor between Azerbaijan and the Azerbaijani enclave in Armenia by U.S. troops that have yet to be deployed, by an implementation of a corridor that is yet to go into effect, but in a system that is yet to be clearly articulated. There's a lot of steps that have yet to be taken and some hurdles that have yet to been gone over for me to say for sure we have a real success story here. It would be great. It'd be fantastic for there not to be another war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. All those people displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh, all those people that could be displaced by another Azerbaijani invasion into internationally recognized Armenian territory in order to try to connect with the enclave would be a humanitarian and geopolitical catastrophe. So it would be great, but considering the Azerbaijani leader's previous expansionist statements, his track record, the power disparity between the two forces, and just recent history, treating this as a done deal at this point is very hopeful. But some people might even say naive. That is not to say that peace is not possible. That is to say that you need to look at it realistically or you're going to end up getting burnt. So that's my view on that matter. But that's not what we're talking about today. Okay, I wish that all the best. Okay, that process has yet to collapse. Yay. But instead, we're talking about where the violence is still raging currently. But you wouldn't know that if you listen to the Trump administration. See, a couple of months ago, back in June and July, the Trump administration inked an agreement between the government of the Congolese and the government of Rwanda. And what that agreement said is that the Rwandan government would no longer support M23 rebels that had been fighting in the Congolese territories in their east, primarily in North Kivu and South Kivu regions. They would stop supporting them, and these offensives would calm down, they would stop, and the Congolese government would be able to find a peaceful solution instead of a violent solution with the M23 rebels. Now, there's a few problems with this deal. The first problem with this deal is that it was very rushed. It was very rushed and it was high pressure. And that's how Trump negotiates. High pressure, very rushed, not with the Russians, but with them, that's how it was, under the idea of economic consequences and lost out economic deals if you do not take it. And so what that means for the more than 100 armed groups that are operating in the Eastern Congo, that you're not going to be able to make a settlement with every single one of them, or even be able to communicate implementation with every single one of them. And that also means that a lot of the pro-Congolese militias have continued to fight. Groups that the government of the Congo said that they would agree to not work with anymore are continuing to fight. And it also means that the M23 rebels are continuing to not only go on offensives, but expand offensives. In the last, like 2 months ago, the M23 rebels engaged in offensives in the month of July that killed well over 300 civilians. And other organizations like the ADF, which operates in North Kivu province, an Islamist organization with ties to the Islamic State, is also engaging in offensive operations, which are killing tons of people. Here's an article from Christianity Today. Okay, I'm not going to cuck MSNBC News to get you the biased take. They're saying 52 Christians were just killed in Congolese attacks. These were just killed by the Allied Democratic Forces, a group that, again, has pledged itself to ISIS. They just killed all these people. There was no agreement with them. So before you even talk about how M23 is not abiding by the agreement, how in some ways the Congolese government also isn't abiding to the agreement, though of course people in the Congolese government would say that's because of the M23 offensives. While that's happening, we never even got close to addressing the threat of these Islamic State aligned militias that are engaging in massacres in North Kivu province. So not only is the agreement as it stands not working and halting violence on the front line right now, as the Trump administration continues to tout this as a peace success of the peace President Trump, but there's other groups that they haven't even begun to address that are engaging in horrific massacres right now, like the Allied Democratic Forces, which despite their name are not democratic forces. They're Islamic State aligned terrorists. Rwanda, evidence suggests, is continuing to supply M23 rebels that go on these offensives. The Congolese government, their backed militias are continuing to engage in attacks in the region. The agreement as stands is being violated on a daily basis by the Trump administration. But again, if you listen to the press releases from the White House, if you listen to Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, if you listen to Steve Witkoff, if you listen to Donald Trump, this is not what you're being told. What you're being told is just one of many other successes. It's just, listen, they quickly say Congo, then he'll quickly say Azerbaijan and Armenia, if he doesn't say Albania instead of Azerbaijan, which did happen on one occasion. Old man Trump, oldest man in American history, leading the White House. We need to keep an eye on that, especially as JD Vance is talking about, well, Trump's in the best health of his life, but you never, if he does. Either way, this deal is being violated on a daily basis. How can you claim the deal has been a success? That is not even to say that this cannot lead to successes down the road. That is not to say that as these governments are having talks right now in Qatar, as the Congo M23 rebels, the rebels directly have talks in Qatar, that this can't have success. Look, the M23 rebels never agreed to withdraw from the territories that they held. And the Congo said that they never agreed to allow any support from Rwanda to continue to flow into the country, or for the M23 rebels to control any territory in North Kivu or South Kivu provinces or anything like that. They certainly didn't agree to that. So the war wasn't settled in the White House because there were key differences that had not been talked about. And because of how it was rushed, the M23 rebels were largely excluded from the conversation. And it seemed like the Trump administration treated it as well, we talked to the Rwandan government, basically done. But at the end of the day, even if the Rwandan government is the party that is largely supplying the M23 rebels, both the Rwandan government can use their separation from them as cover, and the M23 rebels are a separate organization that's being supported, both in attacks on Congolese villages and on Congolese backed militias, and on attacks on targets that are made up by former Hutu war criminals that massacred the Tutsis during the Rwandan genocide, which is an element of this that is not often covered in the at least Western publicated press. Look, all I'm asserting is that despite the talks that are going on in Qatar right now, the violence since the deal was inked in the White House did not de-escalate. It continued, and it got bad. Massacres of dozens and dozens of people of the ADF, who was not in the party even in these agreements, and hundreds of others of civilians killed. Many other people displaced, and of course, many combatants fallen in both M23 controlled territory and Congolese controlled territory. So the ceasefire did not succeed. The war is raging on, and there is no peace. The hope is that the talks in Qatar between the Congolese government and the M23 rebels can lead to successes down the line, but we cannot forget the main ingredient here. And the main ingredient is that the gun stop firing. And you can't call it a peace until the gun stop firing. And so until that ceasefire line is quiet, until observers say that the massacres have stopped, the peace deal has not succeeded. And we cannot call this a Trump success. Until then, you can either call it a Trump failure or just say it hasn't succeeded yet, if you want to be as generous as possible. But in the way Trump's talking about it already being a success, no, it has not. Massacred Christians from Islamists is not success. Massacred civilians from M23 offensives is not success. The continued clashes between Congolese-backed militias and M23 rebels is not a ceasefire. There is no peace. The war rages on. Hopefully the talks in Qatar will lead to some progress. But I remain highly skeptical. I'm happy we finally got to talk about this.